Welcome to Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes. And on this podcast, we talk about mental health issues in business and beyond, and we look for solutions. I'm going to introduce my guest to you today. This is Charlynn Shields. Hello.
Hello.
And she says Char is what she goes by. So
Char's
hello,
great.
Char.
Hello.
Let me tell you about Char. She is a seasoned marketing leader with over 20 years experience spanning publicly traded companies, high-growth startups, and now the nonprofit sector. She currently serves as Senior Director of Marketing and Awareness at Huntsman Mental Health Foundation, supporting the work of Huntsman Mental Health Institute, where she leads efforts to elevate awareness, engagement, and philanthropic support for mental health. Throughout her career, Char has built and scaled marketing strategies across a wide range of industries, bringing a unique perspective on how to connect brands with purpose. Today, her work is deeply rooted in advancing mental health as a global charitable cause, helping increase awareness and access to care, and inspire communities to take action. She is passionate about using storytelling and strategic marketing to make mental health more visible, approachable, and supported, because she believes every brain is beautiful and worthy of care. I love that. Thanks again for being here, Char.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You have a kind of a unique story that gets you involved in mental health. It's what usually my first question is, how do people, what's their approach to mental health in that? So tell us about your history with this.
Yeah. So as many guests on your podcast have experienced, growing up in a smaller town, mental health was just not spoken about. It was kind of under the radar, if you will. And so early on, I learned from my father at the time. He's a rancher, so I grew up in a very small rural town on a farm, and it was always rub some dirt on it. Don't don't talk about your feelings as much. I had a great childhood, by the way. Shout out to my parents, who are amazing, by the way. But we don't always know the right way to approach our feelings or how to talk about a struggle that we're having. And so kind of early on, I learned to compartmentalize my feelings, if you will, and since have changed my perspective on my own mental health. But so growing up, that was very prevalent. And then in our community now, it hasn't changed all that much. Yeah. It's still that way. So I've always been passionate about telling those stories to bring more awareness about what is happening, maybe on not on the surface, but just there, and volunteered in a lot of community capacities surrounding mental health, and just how we can bring together that awareness, and that has since led me to what I do today.
So, and I love you mentioned to me, you said in your own mental health journey kind of started with this idea that you were neglecting your own care.
Yes, for sure.
So I guess number one, how did you come to that realization? Mm-hmm. And number two, what do we do to help people kind of understand that? You and I were talking earlier about kind of that need for put your mask on first, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
So I lost my ex-husband to suicide, and he was an incredibly talented individual, so smart, so funny. And we were married for about 7 years. And during that time, he struggled with some addiction. He had ADHD as well. And during that time, he always had some incredible bright spots and found the help that he needed, but was always struggling. And so during that time, I took on that role as a caregiver does. And you tend to neglect your own mental health, whether that's taking care of yourself first before trying to help someone else. And addiction is a cunning and baffling disease. It's not an easy fix. It's something that it's a journey. And he would always feel like he had it under control, but there were other challenges that he was struggling with. And so during that time, it was very baffling to me as well that we were, getting the care that we thought that we would need. We would, help him through one or more issues, and then maybe something else would appear. And so it became extremely frustrating, and I felt a little lonely at that time because I felt like if I talked about it, I would be talking about him, and I could only tell my story or what I was experiencing, but I always neglected to talk about myself in that situation. And so it became a little isolating during that time. And very emotional, obviously, at the end, when we decided to separate and then eventually divorce. And during that time, I was still trying to be there for him in a friendship capacity. And it was really difficult to see him, still struggling. And then you have the family component there too, where a lot of people don't know how to interact with someone going through a mental health crisis, whether that be an addiction struggle or something else. They always think it must be something external or someone must be doing this to that person, and it's exasperating the issue. And so at that time, I felt a lot of guilt. I was feeling very guilty or felt a lot of guilt and shame surrounding the loss of that relationship. And then also, was I a contributing factor to his mental health?
Yeah.
So it was a very scary time. And I love talking about it now because I now know that it wasn't my fault. His journey was his own, and I was doing my best to support him. And then, when he chose to end his life, that became very isolating. And you just feel when you go through that, which my heart goes out to anyone who's lost anyone from suicide. And it's very prevalent and it's very common in our communities today, especially in Utah. We're in the top 10 of suicide rankings, and that's not a place that you want to be in.
No.
But my heart goes out to anyone who's ever lost anyone in that way. And your grief is so big that you just don't know where to put it at times. And so you're blaming, is it the care that they received? Is it that we didn't do enough? Is it, you can ask yourself 1,000 questions, but at the end of the day, I learned, by getting my own help with my own mental health struggles, that it wasn't my fault. And if I could say that 100 times today, it would be that it's not your fault. Yes. And you're not alone, and that there's help that you can get as a caregiver from someone that's struggling with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people have trouble teasing out what are, I like to call, contributing factors versus causal factors.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we think, well, I was involved in the relationship, so surely I had some sort of influence on their behavior. And for sure, relationships are always two-way streets, and everything we do is going to have a potential influence on someone else, but it's not the cause of their behavior. And they make choices based on any number of things that some of it has to do with your influence and some of it not. And so I think sometimes we take on way too much on ourselves when we start to assign a lot of guilt, specifically attributed to things and say, well, this was my fault. I think human behavior is far too complex for that, for any one of us to say on any issue, good or bad, that I was the one that caused this to happen.
Yeah.
There's just too many variables that are going into it. The other thing I love, and I appreciate you so much sharing your story, is that just we talk often about, okay, yeah, you can move past this, and we say that, we give it lip service, and here you are moving past it. And I love that because you're an example to people where people say, well, look at her and what she did and what she went through and now what she's doing now. And that help and healing is there. It involves people becoming aware of where the help is and then having to dig in. You have to do the work.
Yeah. I always say that I haven't moved past it. I've learned to move with it. I've learned to move through it, over and under sometimes, right? But and I don't, want to discourage people that there isn't hope and there isn't like a great way to live after you've experienced something like this. But it never leaves you. I think about it quite frequently still. But there are tools now, right, that I have that I can move with it and I can talk about it. And one of the things that helps me is sharing my story. And it's hard, and you don't have to share every, part of your journey or your story, but I encourage other people to do the same. It really does help. It's a cathartic way that you find people in your camp, you find your friends, you find people that are going through similar things, and that gives me strength.
Yeah. When any sort of trauma that we go through, I totally agree with you. We never, I don't know if get over it's the right word. It always is a part of us. We always remember the things that happened. But I think if we can become a part of just the tapestry of our life, of a piece that this is a piece that did influence me at a time, and it can influence you differently as
Yeah.
life goes on. Like now for you, it's almost more of a, this is a thing I can talk about that
Mm-hmm.
helps me, process it, and it helps others as well. And so
Mm-hmm.
instead of it just being like all loss and all trauma, there's
Mm-hmm.
upside to it as well. And I think there's upside to every negative in our life. The trick is finding it.
Yes.
And we get so mired down in the negative at
Mm-hmm.
times.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think we use the word stigma quite a bit, but we don't talk about celebrating people who are getting help, celebrating the fact that you may have tried to take your own life, or we just shy away from that conversation. And I think that's the answer. It's not the solution, but I think part of the answer of breaking stigma, if you will, is being willing to sit with others in their story and celebrate them
Yeah.
for getting the help that they need.
Which is the exact opposite, like you said, of our
Mhm.
natural inclination. Why do you think we shy away from it?
So many reasons I wish I could say, but I think it doesn't come as a comfortable thing. It's not our first response to talk about things that are hard. There's stigma surrounding our community, what faith you belong to, or how you were raised, like me. Maybe you were
Right.
taught
Rub
that
some dirt on it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So there's so many factors, and we don't want to be judged. But also, we talk about this a lot in our same space and on your podcast about mental health is health. And if it were cancer, or if it were a toothache or a broken arm, we're very adamant, and we share with our friends and family of like, oh, I found the best dentist, or I
Yes.
found the best orthopedic surgeon. But we don't talk about the therapists that we all work with, or the group therapy sessions that you go to, or maybe a self-care thing that you're doing that is beneficial. I think it's getting better and better, as especially youth are so brave to be able to talk about what they're going through, and being able to say, hey, I need a timeout. And they're more vocal with that. So that brings me hope. But I still think that we struggle with just speaking up and sharing our vulnerabilities in that
Yeah.
way. And it could be a lot of things, right? It's like how we've been taught.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there's a ton of things working against it, not only
Mhm.
kind of our upbringing and the way society has been for so long.
Mm-hmm.
I think also just our mind and our body, we want this homeostasis, this equilibrium, and we don't like living in those liminal spaces
Yeah.
where there's uncertainty. We want things to
Mhm.
just resolve right away, because then that gets us back to how we feel, that we
Mhm.
feel good. But so much of life
Mm.
is in that middle, that messy middle.
Yes.
And we
the
talk
messy
about
middle.
so much of it is there. And the
Mhm.
better we get at learning to kind of tolerate that ambiguity and being able to sit in places that are uncomfortable, man,
Mhm.
that is a huge skill. And if you can master
Mhm.
that, man, you're destined for greatness at that
Yeah.
point, because then everything that comes up that's a challenge, you're like, okay, I can handle this. I might be
Absolutely.
a few weeks in this space, and we'll see how it goes,
Mhm.
instead of just immediately trying to race out of it.
Yeah.
Actually makes me think of social media,
Yes.
right? Because the goal of that, even like AI, I was talking to a friend about one of their favorite, chatbots that they use, and they were saying that it never tells her anything negative,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just always reinforcing, right? And it has
Mhm.
to be, because if the chatbot says, well, that idea stinks and I think you should do this, then you're like, well, I'm out of here. I'll go find something else, because there's
Right.
competition. You can choose between one or
Mhm.
the other. And it's all designed to make us feel good. It's all
Yeah.
designed to get us back to that homeostasis of everything's
Mhm.
fine, even when everything's not fine. You're in marketing,
Yes.
and social media is what you have to do, right?
Yes. And I will say marketing is doing its job better than ever in both good ways and bad ways. We're in that space of the no-click answer. So when you're searching for something, whether it be, let's say you're searching for mental health support, or you're trying to self-diagnose what's happening so that you don't have to
do
talk
that, by
about
the way.
it.
I tell
Yes.
people all the time.
Absolutely no. But we live in the age where that no-click answer is going to show up in your algorithm, whether you're searching on Google or you're on social media looking for videos. And it kind of prevents us from diving deeper and self-isolating as well. So social media in particular, we all know that it started out as a wonderful thing to build connection and community. And now we know it's actually leading to sleeplessness in adults, anxiety, increased depression, and especially in youth, we're seeing that now. We're seeing the effects of social media. And the one thing that it is bringing up is bullying. And we talk a lot about Safe UT and what a wonderful resource that is. You can text for support.
Yep.
You can call with phones going away in schools. But the number one thing that they're seeing, the number one complaint or tips that they're getting is bullying. And I believe that social media brings up that comparison culture. So we see in others what we want to possess ourselves, and we forget that it's not real. One
Right.
side of the story is there on the shiny, happy people side of things, but it's bringing up this comparison culture, and it can be very harmful if we don't take it as entertainment value, or if those folks that we're seeing on social media aren't showing us the other side,
Right.
the behind the scenes, if you will. So it can be a wonderful thing. It can be a wonderful tool that brings us better at connection,
Yeah.
but it can be very harmful
Yeah.
in that comparison way.
I was just the other day driving down the highway, and someone drove past me in a truck towing a very large speedboat behind it.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, that's pretty cool, that
Mhm.
boat and everything. And then, but knowing people who have owned boats, I knew there is so much hassle that comes with that,
Yes.
and because it was all tarped over and everything. And it looks like they had
Mhm.
been coming from where they were. And there's so much cleaning and washing and
Mhm.
all this stuff. So it looks great, just
Mhm.
in that moment. I think, oh, that's awesome. But there's always kind of that just all the other stuff, that
The
goes
work behind it.
exactly, that goes
Mhm.
with it. And for some people, that's great. And they say, I love having a boat, and I'm okay with
Mhm.
doing all the work that has it. We were talking earlier about a dog that you have, and people,
Yes.
pets are wonderful, but they're work as well.
Mhm.
And if you're willing to accept all the work along with it, then you get
Mhm.
all these amazing benefits too. But for some
Yeah.
people, but if all you saw was just, you just see all the videos of the golden labs going
Mhm.
around doing funny things, you think, well, that's great. Let's
Exactly.
get a golden lab, until you realize there's
Yeah.
a lot of other stuff that goes with that too.
Yes.
And that's part of the problems with social media.
Mm.
And no one's going to put out there, showing bath time and
Sure.
cleaning up, the messes
Yeah.
and the ringworm and all this stuff. Right?
I think it takes the uniqueness out of the human experience in some aspects.
Yeah.
We have to remember that you and I are unique individuals, and our experience is going to be different. It's going to be different than the majority most of the time. And we're just looking at this wave of golden retrievers, if you
Yes.
will, and they're all just smiling and happy.
Right.
But there are other things behind that.
Yeah.
Different types of dogs can have different, behavioral issues. It's I hate to say it that we're comparing people to golden retrievers, but let's be honest. We all have those good things and bad
That's
things
right.
about our personalities. But we just tend to say to ourselves, well, I'm not looking like that. I don't have that thing, or I'm not as comfortable sharing my story as this person. But we have to remember there's so much uniqueness to our individual stories and our journeys and what we're going through.
Yeah. Let's talk about Huntsman Mental Health Foundation.
Yeah.
So what are for people who don't know, tell us
Mhm.
just kind of what it is, and then tell us about some of your primary focuses right now.
Sure, yes. And as we're recording this podcast, it is Mental Health Awareness Month.
That's right.
And so happy to be here talking about this during this awesome time. And every month is Mental Health Awareness Month for us
Right. And it should be for all of us.
Yes, at Huntsman Mental Health
Yes.
Foundation. And so we want to change the way that the world sees, treats, understands, and prevents mental illness. And we raise funds and awareness that support Huntsman Mental Health Institute and the work that they're doing. So it's not only access to care like the Kem and Carolyn Gardner Crisis Care Center that just opened in South Salt Lake, but research, right? Finding out why suicide is a causality in certain, maybe even genetic markers. And we're trying to bring that research to care models. And so there's many ways that we do that with the work of the Institute, as well as other work on mental health awareness side. But we're trying to change the way that the world sees and treats and prevents mental illness.
Yeah. I love the research aspect of it as well.
Mm.
And that's not cheap.
No.
Research is expensive to do, but that's being curious about these things is probably the only way that we're going to get better answers.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of the stuff we're seeing with social media. I remember even just years ago, I saw a billboard that said something about social media causing mental health issues in teens, and I thought, that's not true. They're talking about causing, because there's causal and then correlational research. Until I did my deep dive, and I thought, oh my goodness, there's research out there that is showing causality right now.
Yes.
In addition to, all sorts of correlational research, and it's because we're able to ask those questions and we have the resources to be able to research them at that level that we find these things out.
Yeah, 97% of Americans can agree that we're in a mental health crisis, but less than 2% of philanthropic dollars go towards mental health.
Isn't that crazy?
I know, and let's just pause there for a minute. I mean,
seriously,
that is a lot of people who care about what's happening and not a lot of dollars or funds going towards the action, and that's what we're trying to change. And we're just asking folks to be vulnerable with their stories and chat about mental health as if you would any other thing in your life. And what's staggering is those numbers. If you think about it, I think it's 700,000 Americans. 700,000 Americans will be impacted by some sort of mental health struggle. And if you think about that in Utah too, it's 1 in 2 people. 1 in 2 people that in their adult lives will have a mental health diagnosis.
Totally.
That's crazy. I mean,
it's every other person.
It makes you feel less alone. So if there's a positive, that's it. But so we need to bring more resources, more research, and more awareness to mental health as a cause.
Any idea or any thoughts on why 2% is going to this? I mean,
I think it's the same reason why we don't want to talk about our struggles. We kind of think, oh, it's our issue to deal with, or there's already resources out there. I don't think we need more, or it's the same idea that if I give to mental health causes, my dollar won't show up in research. Or, and I'll just say too, the Huntsmans have an amazing name. They have an amazing legacy. They're doing with mental health as they've done with cancer. So I think a lot of folks think, oh, they don't need money. They're already, doing great on their own, but we're very self-sustained. We ask the support of our community members, and every dollar counts that goes towards mental health. And so I think it is that stigma that we're doing okay, seems like everyone's talking about it. There might not, we don't need to support it with our dollars, but that's the opposite. Yeah.
Well, and maybe even on top of that, like we talked about, just that general discomfort with the topic as well. It might be easier for someone to give to cancer research because it's maybe it seems a little more sterile or not as impactful. Like I've never had cancer, and so that seems. But when we talk about mental health, I mean, I've had mental health issues throughout my life. Everyone has, to one degree or another. And so maybe it is just a little too personal. I don't know. But bottom line is, I think it's it's less understood than a lot of the other, kind of issues that we struggle with. And like you said, I think it's almost universal now. I think the way our society is going, in a coming day, there will be no one who hasn't been touched in some significant way by mental health, either because they've experienced themselves or they've had a first-degree relationship with someone who has had significant mental health issues.
Yeah.
And the more we can get ahead of this, the better. Absolutely.
And speaking of getting ahead, we know that most individuals are diagnosed from the age of 10 to 24, 74%, I believe. That's a huge number, but yet they don't seek treatment options until later on when it becomes a crisis. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is early intervention and prevention. And one of those ways that we can do that is with more access to youth mental health services.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And not to say if you're in crisis, you shouldn't go get help, because you should, but it's almost the worst time to get help. any time before that is a better
Yes.
time than when you're in crisis. And again, I'm not trying to
Exactly.
discourage getting help,
Mhm.
but when you start to see those symptoms come on, that's the
Mhm.
time to reach out. And we get this feeling that, oh, I can just handle this myself. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. But what's the worst part about going to a person, going to a
Yes.
professional and saying, this is what's going on? And she might
Mhm.
say, you know what? I think with a few self-care tips, you could probably manage that and you'll be fine.
Yes.
That's great. Why not get an opinion on that instead of
Exactly.
waiting until we're, can't get out of bed for 5 days in a row. And then we have to
Right.
have someone, look a number up for us so we can figure that out. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
I think we personally just tuck it away thinking
yeah,
I'll be okay, or I can deal with it on my own, or it's not that bad. But if you speak about it early, you're able to kind of stay in that space where you're learning new tools to be able to handle things before it becomes a problem, or I should say, becomes exasperated.
right.
And the sooner we can do that, the better. And that is talking about it. It's also seeking options for treatment that you didn't know existed, and being able to, have those resources readily available to give out to those friends and family members that, one of my favorite things to talk about is 988. It's a crisis lifeline.
Right.
And
Like
we always say
911, but
crisis.
for mental health.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. And we always say crisis, but crisis can be something as small as I'm feeling nervous or anxious
Yes.
or depressed, and I'm not sure where to start. I don't know where to go, seek the right option for what I'm experiencing. And they're able to actually talk you through what the options are.
Yeah.
So it's just a nice little resource, but there's just simple things that we can do at the early, even the beginning of just what does it feel like to have anxiety?
Yeah.
What does depression look like? And when should I go get help?
I love that.
Yeah.
Shar, you've been delightful to talk to.
Mm.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your expertise and your personal story as
Yeah.
well. It's been a treat to visit with you.
Well, thanks for having me.
And if people want to find out more about the Huntsman Mental Health Foundation, where do they go?
Yes, go to hmhf.org and we'll have all the resources there. And again, if you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health issue or want to learn more about where you can go to get help, you can always dial 988. There's Safe UT, and they can always walk in 24/7 to the Crisis Care Center in South Salt Lake. And if they're outside of high school age, we have a Youth Crisis Receiving Center at the Huntsman Mental Health Institute.
God bless the Huntsman Mental Health Institute. Yes.
Yes, thank
Doing
you.
a wonderful job. Thanks, everyone, for listening today. Remember that change starts with you, and together we can increase our mental health momentum.